What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Watch It in Action. I'm BouseFeenux, and today we're going to be taking a look at Rhino Prime. So, Rhino Prime and Rhino have been around for a very long time. A lot of people have played him, a lot of you guys know him. If I were to attribute Rhino with another RPG character or another class, I would say he most emulates the tank. So, a lot of people think of him that way. He's the big tanky guy with a lot of armor. He goes in, he smashes dudes. You know, he stomps all of his problems away, essentially. He's a ton of fun to play. Right now, he may not look like the Rhino that you know and love because I'm using the Rhino Palatine skin with the Jack Attack skin as well. So he may look a little different than, you know, the Rhino that you saw in a picture or something like that, but I assure you, this is the same guy. Moving on to the build, I have one build for Rhino, and it's a lot of fun. It's based around his two abilities here, Iron Skin and Roar. These are the two abilities you're going to have up all the time. Roar is going to give us a damage buff, and Iron Skin is going to give us some survivability. We'll talk more about those in a second, but first let's check out the build. So you see here we have a couple different survivability mods on him. We've got Steel Fiber and we've got Vitality. Vitality is just a good, he's got a lot of base health, so Vitality is a really good skill, or really good mod to put on him. Gives him a little bit of extra survivability. Because Vitality, when you have a lot of health, that works best with having a lot of armor, and that's something Rhino has a lot of at base. So throwing on a max rank Steel Fiber is going to give you even more armor, and it's going to attribute to that Iron Skin ability that we talked about a second ago, and we'll cover here more in a minute. Power Strength is also going to increase a lot of his other abilities. Pretty much all of his abilities are affected by Power Strength, so you want that to be pretty high. We've got it at about 200 right now. We're not using Blind Rage because we need some of that efficiency and duration for Roar and casting the other skills, because he can be kind of a spammy Warframe. You will be using his abilities a lot sometimes. Prime Continuity and Prime Flow, more duration, more power max. I mean, that's always a good thing. If you don't have the Prime versions of these, again, you can use just the regular ones and they'll be just fine until you can get a hold of these guys. Iron Shrapnel is the augment we're going to be using, and this is arguable. You can use, you can throw in more power strength with the Blind Rage if you want. But honestly, I don't really find that I need Blind Rage, because Rhino is a great crowd control, frame, and he's also got some pretty good, you know, party utility as well with his Roar buff. So what Iron Shrapnel allows us to do is it allows us to recast Iron Skin, because Iron Skin is a skill that is basically armor around you know, Rhino, and as he takes damage, it has health, and the health will tick down. Well, the cool thing about Iron Shrapnel is it lets us recast Iron Skin, and while we do so, whenever we recast it, it'll explode, dealing the remaining health as damage, which is really useful, and it throws enemies. So it's a little extra crowd control in there, and you can recast your Iron Skin without having to jump off a cliff or something like that, something that may put you in a compromising situation to get picked off by an enemy. So this allows you to control whenever you recast your Iron Skin, gives you a little extra crowd control possibilities, and a little bit more damage output. So I think it's great. I use the Power Drift mod just because it gives us a little bit more strength and that little knockdown resist there. So moving on to his abilities, I love Rhino because I use all of his abilities with this build. None of his abilities are really that bad. Rhino Charge is basically it's kind of a mobility skill with a little bit of power damage wrapped into one, and it has good synergy with Rhino Stomp, which we'll see here in a second. But essentially how this works is he just charges toward a target at great speed and knocks everybody down or away from him. So this will do some damage, and it's also comboable, kind of like Atlas with his punching. You'll see a little combo window that comes up, and as you cast it successfully, you'll notice that it costs less to cast and does more damage. So that's always really nice. I like how they changed that. It's really fun to use. And then Iron Skin is going to be one of our main abilities for this, and like I said earlier, it's basically armor that coats him, and you'll be pretty much immune to all different status procs, blast, knockdown, viral, anything like that. He'll just shrug it off, which is really, really nice on infested missions. If you're trying to find a frame to solo with, you can't go wrong with Rhino, especially on Eris. If you're trying to clear some of those in-game nodes on Eris, this is a really good frame to take because he won't suffer to the toxic procs that the infested will throw out at you. The big thing with this is it has health, and this health is increased by power strength and armor. So the more armor you have, the more power strength you have, the more the more, you know, armor Rhino is going to have with his Iron Skin. The other thing with this skill, and I'll show you here in a second, is there's a short invulnerability window that lasts for 3 seconds, and during that time, if you take any damage, that damage is added to Rhino's iron skin as health. It used to be, they fixed it like very shortly after it was released, but it used to be you could self-damage and get that health, which was extremely awesome. Because you could use a weapon like the Sacrapenta or the Sancti, or the Haiku Prime, and, you know, with the concealed explosives on it, and just rack up that health, and then you could use the piercing, you know, the piercing augment, and, you know, throw out all that damage. But they changed it, but you can still take damage from enemies, and that's pretty nice too. So moving on, we've got Roar here, and essentially what this does is it grants all nearby Warframes increased damage for a short duration. So this don't confuse this with Power Strength, because Power Strength and damage are kind of two different things. It'll allow their powers to do more damage, but it will not increase their Power Strength, and that's an important thing to remember. If you want something that's going to increase Power Strength, go with Pacify and Provoke with Equinox, and that'll give that Power Strength. But this will allow you to do more damage. And the thing is the allies that you're trying to buff with this, they've got to be within this power range to receive the buff. You can't cast it and then walk around them and they get the buff. They have to be near you when you cast it. So that's one thing to keep in mind with this. Moving on here, we've got Rhino Stomp. This is his ultimate ability, and essentially what this does is he stomps the ground and throws all the enemies up in the air. When they're thrown up in the air, they're suspended for a short period of time, and they'll just hang there, allowing you to pick them off. Or, if you want to get creative, you can charge at them with Rhino Charge, and they'll suffer a blast proc, and this will throw them like pretty much everywhere. So it's pretty good crowd control, good for breaking up large groups of tough enemies, and this skill does pretty decent damage, and keeps your enemies crowd controlled for a second. But that being said, let's take a look at the abilities and see how this guy actually plays. So we're gonna throw down just some whatever dudes that you might find in a Tower 4 or something like that, and we're gonna go to town on him. So we're just gonna use Corrupted Crewman, because if you guys have ever encountered these dudes in Tower 4, they're extremely... They can throw out a lot of damage. They can one-shot you most of the time. I know I fear these guys most of the time when I'm running T4, because they'll just take you out. So we're going to spawn those. I'm just going to show you how tough Rhino can be. Also, as you saw there, he's got the passive maglet, or the passive seismic impact now. Whenever he lands heavy, he'll throw out that seismic wave that'll knock down enemies close to him and do a little bit of damage. But as you see, these guys are doing a ton of damage to me right now. They're super powerful. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw on our iron skin, and we're going to let them hit us a little bit. And we notice that little counter in the corner there going up. We only got 419 extra health. Not too bad, but not as good as we could have. The cool thing is, if we didn't get what we wanted, we can always just run into these guys and recast that iron skin, so we can get that buff again, and these guys can shoot us and maybe rack up some damage on us. And then, let's say we want to, you know, crowd control these guys. There's too many of them. We can't possibly kill all of them. Let's go ahead and throw down a Stomp and see what happens. So now they're all up in the air like this, and I want to get rid of these dudes, so I'm going to charge through them. You see there, it does quite a bit of damage. We have that little 2 times and 4 times that show up, allowing us to, you know, jump around, and it'll pretty much charge in whatever direction you're pointing your cursor at, which is really nice for getting around. It's actually kind of a cool mobility skill. It's pretty efficient, and, you know, it does a good deal of damage. The last skill I want to show you here is Roar. So we're going to throw on Roar. It's pretty simple cast animation. He just yells real quick, gets really pissed off, and now he's going to go in here and deal a bunch of extra damage. So we're using the Grinlock right now, which is a pretty good weapon on its own, but with Rhino, we're going to be doing even more damage than, you know, we normally would. So, I mean, this is basically Rhino. You know, when you throw down, you know, you get a lot of enemies around you, you put them up in the air, you can shoot through them, you know, kill them while they're suspended and helpless. If you pair this skill with Nova's Molecular Prime, it'll take enemies forever to get off the ground. So they'll be really slow getting up, and they'll just hang in the air. They'll fall, and then it'll take them forever to get back up on their feet, which is pretty good crowd control. So Rhino and Nova, pretty good combination for, you know, reducing the mobility of large groups of enemies. But that's pretty much Rhino. I mean, there's really not much more to this guy. You use all 4 of his skills, but honestly, he's really not that complicated. He's a great solo frame. He's good in a group. He's got a lot of utility. He's super fun to play, and of course, one of my most important things is he's cool looking. So I hope you guys have gotten a lot out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned some things about Rhino that you maybe didn't already know. But until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.